Welcome to everybody. This is a great pleasure to present to you Annotation Studio, a program originally developed for humanities education and also increasingly research. My name is Kurt Fendt. I'm the director of MIT's HyperStudio. It's the Digital Humanities Center at MIT. We are part of the School of Humanities, Arts, and Social Science, and also one of the research groups in the Comparative Media Studies and Writing program. So before I'll talk about the Annotation Studio, let me just quickly give you an overview of what we will be doing now. After my brief introduction, Jamie Folsom, the lead developer of HyperStudio and also Annotation Studio, will give you about 10 minutes of run-through of the program, what it can do, its capabilities, and so on. And in addition, then afterwards we'll show you 4 different case studies of faculty who are describing the ways they have been using Annotation Studio in literature classes, in foreign language classes, and with a neighboring institution, the Wentworth Institute of Technology, in a public humanities class. So these are all very different kinds of uses, but they show on the one hand the flexibility of Annotation Studio and also the creativeness of faculty in integrating Annotation Studio and the tool of annotating texts with multimedia into their own classroom. So very quickly about Annotation Studio. This project came really out of long engagement with educational technology and the development of educational technology, working with faculty here at MIT, and a very clear need to advance notions of close reading. How can we engage students better in reading and engaging with texts, sometimes that are very difficult texts such as Moby Dick? How can we get engaged students much more beyond than just reading and discussing it in class, to go very deep into the text, talk about individual words, references, and so on, to really unfold a text in a way that it brings about all the sources, the way the author constructed the text, and so on. So this was one of the very clear initial ideas, and very clearly this has been a tool that we deliberately developed for educational purposes. There are a number of other tools around, that allow annotating of text. You all know that. Google Docs allows you to do that, and so on. But what we did is to really model the way people and faculty and instructors use such a tool in the classroom, meaning, deliberately aiming for students, how students interact, how they would interact with the text, but also, most importantly, in thinking beyond what annotation, which is an old practice, as we all know, how can we transform that into an online platform where clearly sharing and collaborating is one of the key elements. And of course, this is also something that will translate and go back and forth in the classroom. There's collaborative discussion in the classroom, but there's also collaborative annotation and discussing of the texts in the online environment. So this is really a project that has been in development for about 3 years now. We have done other projects with annotation at HyperStudio, but this is really going very deep into the notion of annotating text with multimedia. Right now this is just only text, but we're working on features that are available then for image annotation, video annotation, audio annotation, so really annotating across all different kinds of media to allow students to think across media, that texts are not just written documents, but text can also be transformed into other formats and media. So to conclude, I would just like to thank the National Endowment for the Humanities, who has been instrumental in funding Annotation Studio, and it has been a great pleasure to work with Annotation Studio and NEH and bringing that into a larger community. And we will look forward to the discussion after Jamie's presentation and the case studies so that we can go much deeper into some of the questions that are raised here. So I'll hand it over to Jamie, who will then show you how the project actually works.
Thanks, Kurt. As Kurt said, my name is Jamie Folsom. I'm lead developer on the Annotation Studio project, although it is a project which has had contributions both internally at MIT and through our sort of network of open source collaborators from many developers. So I'm by no means the only person who has worked on this project. In fact, by way of just quick introduction, I will say that you may recognize portions of the software if you have at all explored the universe of annotation tools. As I select some text here on the text that you're looking at, As We May Think by Vannevar Bush, that this is the annotator itself, an open source JavaScript tool which we've integrated into Annotation Studio, and so we both consume and produce open source software. So as I say, this is just taking as one example this text by Vannevar Bush, which is actually in use in Kurt's Digital Humanities course this spring at MIT as an example to show you the basic functionality of the annotation functionality of the tool. You can see here that there are highlights on this text, and as I scroll down, there are highlights throughout this rather long text, and that as I go, the sidebar updates to show you just the annotations which are visible currently in the visible portion of the text. As I roll over a highlight, you can see here is one that I made, an annotation that I made. I can edit or delete this annotation. As I edit it, I have control over who sees it, and I'll talk more about groups in a few minutes. I can add tags, supposing for a moment that I want to add this to my vocabulary or my glossary. For this particular text, I can add that tag here. I can insert links, images, video, and actually I can edit the source of this annotation itself if I want to. And I'll make this visible to all groups, all members of my groups, and I can save it. This annotation is then also visible here in the sidebar, and I can use the sidebar as a navigational mechanism or just to keep track of the current conversation that's going on in this text that I'm looking at. If I want to create a new annotation here, I might select some text. Again, you see that editor button pop up. I'm now able to add some commentary to this. Okay, again, define visibility, add tags if I want to, insert an image or a link, and save. So there you see as I roll over, I can see here's one made by another student. This is that person's comment. This is a tag they added, and tags are completely free form. This is entirely driven by the user's decision about how to form tags, and we've found that instructors tend to give more or less guidance as far as tag use goes, and that they use those tags in different ways in different courses on different texts. I'll show you a little bit more about what we can do here with this text. I'm going to bring in a sidebar that allows me to filter annotations by a number of different kinds of sort of facets of the data. I can see only those annotations made by me, only those annotations made by members of my groups, members of my class, or if I'm an administrator, in this case I'm logged in as an administrator, I can see all annotations made on this text by members of any group, regardless of visibility. I can also decide whether I'd like to see just the annotations on this visible portion of the text or annotations made on the whole text. You can see here there's a large number of annotations. This quickly gets somewhat difficult to manage and somewhat difficult to navigate. So by default, we have this viewport filter enabled. I can also filter on the tags that have been applied to an annotation. So here you can see this tag, this annotation rather, has the tag criticism. Let's see if there are any other annotations on this document that have that same tag. Okay, I'm going to look at all annotations on the whole document. That appears to be the only annotation on this document with that tag. Okay. I can add others if I want to. Let's see. How about glossary? I know that there's one with that. Okay. Where is it? It should have added that to my list here. Maybe I didn't successfully add it. In any case, you get the idea. This is an additive filter, this tag filter on the side here. And this is the first version of the tag filter feature that we've added. People like it, but we think there's a lot more we can do with that, so we're going to be adding more functionality there. Just quickly, on the other side of this text, we have a sidebar which allows us to view information about this text, author, status, publisher, etc., and chapters if we want to. It's another navigational element which allows us to step through the chapters of the text. Let's see if we can try. So Kurt may have more to say about his particular use of this text and the way his students are annotating it. But we'll quickly jump to a few other features before we return to questions of pedagogy.
Jamie, can I ask a quick question?
Please do.
When you, this is funny, I just tried to click on your screen share. When you were going to make one of those annotations and there was the option for an image, can you demonstrate that? I'd love to see how that works.
Let's see what we've got here. We've got an image available, so let's try this. This is an image of a screen. Let's see if I can find that word. Okay. Let's use this. So I just found the word screen in the text by using the browser's find in browser function. I'm going to select this portion of the text, which is regarding screens. I'm going to click the editor here. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to have to find another image of a screen on the web. So currently we don't have the ability to upload images, but I'm gonna find an image of a screen from Wikipedia.
Okay.
Oh, okay. That's not a bad idea. So let's use one of these. These videos are here, which we're going to look at in a few moments. Let's just pick one of these. Okay. So here's one of the videos that we're going to show you later. We'll embed that instead of an image. It works exactly the same way.
Okay.
So let's do that. We'll insert a video. Here's the source. We insert the URL to that video. We can do a number of other things here, but we'll skip that part. Say OK. And I can add, if I want to, I can add commentary as well. So just leave it at that, video of Professor Kelly, and save that video. And there you see there's an annotation now with a video embedded in it. Is that, Fiona, is that what you meant?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, so we can do very much the same thing with links. We can do the same thing with images. We don't yet have the ability to annotate on images or on video. But
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a feature we know is needed, and we're excited to add it. And actually, that will be, we think, coming through our the use of the annotator. The annotator itself will soon be adding support for other media types. So it may be that we add that. It may be that it's added via plugin, or maybe added in the core of the annotator itself. So other questions at this point, or shall I move ahead? Okay, I'll just quickly show. I mentioned groups, and this is a key differentiator for us. If I move back to my dashboard, we have a number of different sections of this application. You can see this is my dashboard. This is what I see when I first log into the application. And I'm seeing a question here. Talk at some point about. Yeah, great question. We'll touch on that toward the end of this of the webinar. That's a great question about accessibility.
Yeah, we'll put that in the Google Doc to make sure we come back to it at the end or towards the end. Yeah.
Thank you. Keep them coming. All right. So the dashboard itself. This is what you see when you first log in. You can see we've added some sort of. The idea here is to give people a quick snapshot of their stuff, their documents, the documents which have been assigned to them, which they've created, their annotations across a number of across all of the documents which they use, annotations by members of their groups and classes, and down here at the bottom you can see the groups and classes that the currently logged in user is a member of. So let me talk quickly about groups and classes. This is one of the features that we think is a really good one, but it's sometimes difficult to get a handle on at first. Essentially, when I create my account, I can add myself to any group or class which I want to. And the way that we've had this work is that instructors will tell members of their classes the groups to add themselves to when they sign up. So it's very easy to add and remove classes to your profile. Here I'm removing a couple. I can add one. Let's see. Let's do DH 2015. Oops. Slow people behind me. And spring. Okay. So as I type that in and I hit enter, I add myself to that group. Now any document which is assigned to that group as well, and I have a hunch there aren't any at the moment, but we can go look at that, will also become accessible to me. I'm now assigned to a group, and documents which are assigned to my group become visible to me as a student. We also had a request from instructors to add what we think of as sort of working groups. That's the second field you see here. So I might work with Kurt, and I might add myself to a group called Kurt Jamie. That just means that Kurt and I can share annotations between ourselves and work collaboratively on an assignment if there were one from our instructor. So there are kind of two levels of, there's a class level and there's a group level that a user can belong to. So I'll return to the dashboard now. And you'll see here that I have a list of documents which are assigned to me. That's because these documents are also assigned to groups that I'm in. So let's look at the full list of all documents, and that's accessible here if I click to go to document list, or by clicking on this link at the top of the document widget on the dashboard. This is the complete list of all documents in the MIT instance of Annotation Studio, and you can see that that's where we are, both by the URL, but also that by this indicator here, and there are a number of different instances. I'll talk about that in a moment. But these are the documents that are loaded into the MIT instance of Annotation Studio. You can see that I have the option to view documents assigned to me, documents which I have created, or because I'm an administrator, I can see all documents in the whole database. I'll skip that one for now, but you can imagine this is a long list. And I'll talk a little bit about what you're seeing here. Clearly, this is a title, author, the date that was created in the system, not the date it was published, and then the groups it's assigned to. And I'd like you to notice down here, this document is assigned to several groups. That's totally perfectly a reasonable way to use this feature. That lets you use a single document across multiple different classes if you want to. The annotations remain private per class, if you will, but that lets you avoid duplicating effort. I also want you to notice here under the status column, there are published documents. Here's a document in draft mode, which means that it can't be annotated yet. And here's a document with another icon next to it. This document is public. What that means is that it can be viewed very much the way that a published document can by logged-in users. But it's also visible to the general public. So I won't demonstrate this now because we've got a lot to go through, but if I were to log out and I were to visit this document even as a logged out user, I would still see it. So you can actually make an annotated document public on the open web, and at this point you have to contact us to let us help you with that, because we want to avoid the various sorts of misuse that could lead to, but it is possible, and we're excited about the feature for future use. Like we can see a number of different instances where that would be useful. So I think I'll talk just a little bit about how documents can be created, and then invite others who have questions about things I didn't cover to let me know, and I'll see if I can cover those things as well. I've just got another minute or two here. So let's look at how documents are created. I'm going to click here on the New Document button. And you see here a form which allows me to create a document. I can type in a title, the author, there's other sorts of metadata. Here you can see the status of the document: draft, published, public, and archived. That means that it's stored, not visible, but not deleted. And there are two different ways, or a number of different ways, that I can actually bring content in. One is to simply cut or copy and paste text, or even just compose text directly here in this this relatively friendly web-based editor. If I went to Gutenberg, for example, Project Gutenberg, any text which is in the public domain, I can copy and paste HTML from there and paste it into here. That works fine. I can also upload either a Word document or plain text document, or actually a simple PDF works as well. The way to think of this is that we are inviting you to bring in relatively straightforward text, and we're stripping out most of the formatting so that the text will work within the parameters of our tool. Very simple PDFs work quite well, single column PDFs with not a lot of other content in them, but anything more complicated than a very simple PDF won't work. And it's important to know that there has to be a text layer in the PDF, an OCR layer, in order for PDFs to work. I'm sure there's more questions about that, but suffice it to say it should be something rather simple. So if I upload a file here, let's see here if I got something ready and available. Let's just look. This is a lab computer, so hopefully we can find something. Let's see. It's taking its time. I may not have the time to do this, but we'll see. I'll look for a document here, desktop. Okay. I'll tell you what, we'll come back to this if I've got time. Here's a text document. We'll just use that one. You have to take my word for it that PDFs and Word documents work too. Signs, lives. All right. And let's put this into published mode. That means it'll be annotatable. And I'll say, let's add this to the DH 2015 spring group. Okay, so I've added that to the group, and I'll create the document. Any features which I didn't touch on, which anyone can think of. So I'll look here under Signs of the Times. Okay, and it's still being converted. So we won't have time to see that in action, but that's the basic functionality there. One last thing I'd like to point to, which I think is important, and we pledge to respond as quickly as we can to this. If you have questions about any of these features or others I didn't touch on, or trouble with any of them, there's a help link at the top of the application. If you open it, that leads to a support forum. You can see there's a fair amount of activity on here. Rachel and I are rather active. We keep an eye on this, and we do answer as quickly as we can. So please feel free to use that. This is a great way to get some help. So that's it for the quick demo, and we'll move over now to some of the talking heads and the folks who have used this extensively in their courses. I think this is the most important and interesting part of this webinar. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jamie. As you can see, this is a really easy-to-use tool, and it has been used very flexibly in many different contexts in education so far. So what we will start out is with a public humanities project as a case study to show you how two faculty at the Wentworth Institute of Technology here in Boston has actually worked with with Annotation Studio in a public humanities context, and I'll just play the video.
Everyone see that okay?
No, actually, I think it doesn't show right now. Can you see it, Fiona?
Decided to our class.
No, I can't see it.
Okay.
Let's pause it for a moment, make sure it's working. Hold
Yeah.
on, folks.
I think it's because it might. Did you do it in full screen?
Yeah.
Maybe you need to. I don't know.
Let's try
It
this
worked.
one.
Yeah, it worked when we tried it.
Yeah.
We just see the webcam right now. Maybe if you turn off the webcam.
Back to the. You gotta go back to that thing.
To here?
No, that's turning it off. Hi, everybody. No, that doesn't make a
Yeah,
difference
okay.
right now.
So does it now?
I think the browser
Yeah,
window
now
is
we're
now
seeing
showing.
this. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you all,
Okay, let's just go back to the beginning. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, now what we might do is make the browser a little smaller so we can just see that.
Yeah,
Is that better, folks?
that works.
Okay. When we decided to bring Annotation Studio to our class, basically we had to come up with a lesson plan that we thought would work in terms of what we knew our students were capable of, how to teach them quickly, and also get across what our goals would be for using Annotation Studio within the class. We had a really important document, as Chris has already mentioned, the document called the Gertrude Dennis manuscript, which gives a complete overview of the contents of the James Michael Curley House in the 1950s, what it looked like when they lived there, and it's just a descriptive document that goes room by room and describes objects and the nature of the rooms, and of course today none of that stuff is there. So you have to imagine what was there at that time, and this document gives us that. But the ability to annotate this document with metadata gave us the ability to repopulate these rooms with the objects that actually existed. So we had a primary text 34 pages long that we were able to upload into Annotation Studio, and then the goal would be to have the students annotate this text and actually explicate a lot of the words in the text that might be difficult for them, or they have to look up what the objects were, or provide an image, or explain them in some kind of way. Of course, we live in an age where we're bombarded with information, bombarded with text. We look at things on a screen, we rapidly read it, digest it, and throw it away. We want students to get back, as one of the missions, I think, of Annotation Studio is, we want students to get back to close reading and understanding and really looking at a text and getting into the words. So Annotation Studio allowed us to say, we have this document, you students go out and try to understand what the house looked like, what these documents were, and can you find examples of them and how they functioned like that. So we had this great piece of evidence to work on. Then basically we introduced them to the program. We showed them the basic interface. We got each of the students to sign up for the program. It's all relatively easy, create a user account, and then we went from there into actually saying, how are we going to divide up looking at this document? So there's 34 pages of the document. We had 34 students. Each student was going to annotate a page. We taught them basically how to annotate in different ways, how to add text to a word, how to add an image to a word, how to add a link to the word, all the very simple things of annotation. We also showed them how it would be done collaboratively. I basically projected my computer that had the main text on it in front of the entire class, and then I scrolled through it as they started to annotate
and I also refreshed it periodically so that they could see they were working as a group to do this job. And I think that was an incredible collaborative aspect of Annotation Studio, to watch the annotations come in and watch their peers sitting around them, doing this work with them to explain this incredibly important text and learn more about Curly. So this was all achieved in under 2 hours. It was really incredible to see that we could go from them never have seen this program before, very few of them ever done any kind of close reading before, and then moving to this situation where we were getting this text that was absolutely just came alive. It absolutely just came alive, and we had this, image of what the house could have looked like and the kind of data that that text could give us, all from this sort of under 2 hour experience. And so Annotation Studio has that kind of power. It has that, if you have the right kind of text, have the right kind of setting, have students that have an interest and some sort of ability with this, which a lot of our students do because of their technological background. I think it's just a perfect kind of tool for this kind of course.
So this was clearly an example for a public humanities project, and it has been part of a larger initiative, of course, of the reconstruction of this Curly house in Boston. And so
Yeah.
This was just to introduce you to the next video. This is now Wynne Kelly, senior lecturer in the literature department here at MIT, and she has been a long-time collaborator in really rethinking how we could model close reading in a digital space. And so she will be talking about also how resources can be used in allowing students to go much deeper into the text through close reading.
No, of course we're muted.
I've been using annotation in literature classrooms for a long time before I even had a digital tool. I was particularly interested in having students find out about the source texts for the 19th century novels we were reading, because the research they did on those texts gave them expertise with research skills that stood them in good stead. I found, however, that as we developed Annotation Studio, the work they did with a text like Frankenstein, for example, allowed them to open up their reading into much larger literary context. The example we're looking at here, it shows a student responding to the preacher's self-description by thinking about Goethe's Sorrows of Young Werther and wondering why he hasn't been loved. And this led to a paper that was remarkably imaginative and well-researched for an undergraduate essay. So the usage here is very close to the text and working with specific details to open up a literary work, pretty close to home. My later developments took me into using multiple annotations with the same text and in the same classroom. So my second example comes from Moby Dick and a seminar called Mapping Melville, in which I wanted students to think about different kinds of mapping of a text, and starting with geomapping, but moving into, again, using sources, also looking at the stages of a manuscript, mapping the writing process itself. But it began with this kind of annotation again, this time for geographical locations. So here is an example of reference to Cape Horn, and a student getting interested in that location in the text because she had done work in Patagonia and it appealed to her. And here I wanted them to also have the support of a second annotation tool developed at MIT called Locast. This is a scaled-down version of what you would see if you opened up the whole map. In Locast, students created locations on a map that were key to passages in the text, and then they could populate these with images, historic maps, and their own writing. So here they're annotating a map which allows them also to go back and annotate Moby Dick by suggesting the sorts of graphic tools and resources that Melville drew on when he wrote his book. So we have annotation at various levels here and a deeper understanding of how a text opens up into a whole range of other related materials.
So you could clearly see that Annotation Studio, and in Kelly's case, has also been used in conjunction with other tools, in this case Locast, to annotate a map. Another use is, we will show you, done by Ina Lipkowitz, also lecturer in the literature department here at MIT. And she's been using Annotation Studio on the one hand in her Bible class. And we have one comment, I think, from Adam Copeland from Concordia College, who has basically told us he teaches religion and practical theology. So there might be some connection to this here. But Ina Lipkowitz has also used it in a historical recipe class, historical food studies class, so which is also a very interesting approach to this. So I'll just play these the video.
Hello, my name is Ina Lipkowitz, and I teach literature here at MIT. As anyone who teaches literary text knows, one of the hardest things to do is to get students to read closely, to pay close attention to words rather than generalize about the big ideas. The beauty of Annotation Studio is that it forces students to pay close attention and to anchor their responses to specific words and passages in whatever it is they're reading. I've been very impressed with the way students have focused their thoughts in the two classes that I've used Annotation Studio in. The first class was reading historic cookbooks. The idea behind the class was that recipes read closely illuminate the cultures that produce them, pointing to historical forces, religious concerns, nutritional theories, gender concerns, economic issues, changing technology, among many other things. By the end of the semester, each student produced an annotated historical cookbook, which drew upon secondary sources that I'd assigned or that students found on their own. The recipe you're looking at right now, apple moly, which is basically apple mush or applesauce, is from an early English recipe collection dating to the late 14th century. The students' annotations, as you can see, open up the recipe to reveal many concerns distinctive of the late medieval period, the merging of French and English in the recipe's Middle English title, the fact that the fruit is sieved reflects the medieval theory of the humors that held that cold fruit had to be heated in order to avoid throwing the system in balance. The almond milk reflects Catholic fast days on which no animal products, including dairy, could be eaten. The use of honey rather than sugar, which wouldn't arrive in Europe for some centuries yet, and the almonds, saffron, and powder fort all reflect the spices and exotic ingredients brought back to Europe by returning crusaders. In other words, annotating this one simple recipe taught the student quite a lot about the world that produced it. The final project of the semester was a historical cookbook in which students chose recipes from the 14th century to the present day and developed their annotations into informed, contextualized, and specific discussions of the particular recipes. The next time I used Annotation Studio, in the class I teach on the Bible, I had a different pedagogical purpose in mind. Rather than having students explicate or explain a text on their own, I wanted them to appreciate how many different ways biblical texts can be and have been read and understood. In order to do this, I had the students work collaboratively rather than individually. I divided the class into groups. You can easily create such groups with Annotation Studio, assigning each group a specific topic to keep in mind as they read the text. For instance, when we read the book of Genesis, different groups were assigned such topics as different names of God and differences in the two accounts of creation. When we read the Gospels, groups were assigned to read an eye on differences in the nativity narratives and the characterization of Judas. What you're looking at now is a dialogue that emerged when a group of students was annotating a section of the book of Exodus. Their group was called Why the Unleavened Bread? And as you can see, when forced to read closely, the students observed that there are in fact different reasons given in the Bible for the unleavened bread. On the one hand, the Israelite slaves had to rush out of Egypt with no time for their bread to rise. On the other hand, as the second student noted, the Lord planned the Exodus out ahead of time, so what was the big rush about? This led the students to a dialogue about whether God depicted in Exodus is in fact omniscient. Each group then presented its findings in class, which led to discussion about the many ways biblical text can be read and understood. The annotations became the basis of their written work, and I know that a study is underway correlating their annotations with the success and specificity of their finished essays. Finally, I'd like to quote something a student wrote in his or her course evaluation at the end of the Bible class. I would like to see more Annotation Studio exercises. Those were really helpful, and it was interesting to see the comments of other people. Also, it made me feel like my comments weren't completely off base when I saw people commenting about similar things.
Okay, so the last example we want to show you is an actual use of Annotation Studio in a foreign language classroom, in this case in a Spanish class, also here at MIT, done by Roberto Rey Agudo. And he uses in a very smart way also video integrated into the text.
Hello, my name is Roberto Rey Agudo, and I teach Spanish at the Global Studies and Languages Department at MIT. I am going to talk about my experience using Annotation Studio in a third semester Spanish class. I came to Annotation Studio at a time in which we were phasing out one of our textbooks, and what drew me to Annotation Studio were three things. First, it is open and free. Second, it allows me to integrate media and text. And it also, by having students annotate and read peer annotations, had the potential to contribute to much more dynamic class discussions. What were the pedagogical goals that I was trying to achieve by adopting Annotation Studio? Well, first of all, I was trying to help students develop reading and writing proficiency in the target language. One of the differences between using Annotation Studio in a literature class and using it in a foreign language class is that in the foreign language class, we have to help students understand the text before you can get to analyze it. And so the way we do it is by basically designing tasks that advance students from basic objectives like creating glossaries or paraphrasing to mid-level objectives like applying new knowledge, finding evidence, identifying themes, analyzing the use of language, and eventually to higher-level tasks like shaping and defending arguments, writing essays, using evidence from the text, and so forth. And Annotation Studio allows me to use one single platform for most of these tasks. A second goal was to turn reading assignments into a communicative act. I say that it's communicative because the student is producing writing in the target language. The students are also communicating with their peers because they're reading each other's comments. And they're also communicating with me since everything that they write is visible to me. Which takes me to my last goal, which is to introduce an element of accountability in preparation for classwork. What you see on the screen now is a story about Argentinian writer Marco de Nevi called Esquina Peligrosa. And it showcases how having students use evidence from the text and engage with each other's comments contributes to much more subtle and deeper discussions than one would typically get in after semester class. We normally spread these reading over 2 days. The first day we basically try to understand what happens in the story, in which basically a tycoon feels the urge to visit the store where he used to work as a delivery boy in his teenage years. And upon entering the store and finding it unchanged, seems to transport himself, quite literally, to his days as a humble delivery boy in a working-class neighborhood. By the end of the first day, students typically arrive at two competing interpretations. They either recognize an element of fantasy in the story, or they think that the tycoon is the invention of a boy who is daydreaming about his future while bored at his work. So for the following day, for the following class, I have students reread the story, find supporting evidence for their interpretation, use the tagging function to identify which interpretation they are defending, and make their comments visible for other students to read. And in class the following day, students compare and debate their interpretations by making references to the original text, but also, crucially, to each other's annotations. And I have to say that the depth and subtlety of analysis that they arrive at is quite remarkable for this level. On the screen now you have student annotations to a short story by Borges, El Episodio del Enemigo. And I have selected it to show how students can interact and manipulate the text. You will notice right away that there is a missing word at the bottom of the screen. And that missing word contains the key to understanding the whole story. It's what the narrator does to save himself from the threat of an old enemy who's finally tracked him down into his house and who is pointing the gun at him. For this reading, in addition to a number of other tasks, I have students read the story carefully and make a prediction about the ending. Then students select the gap, write the prediction as a publicly visible annotation, and by choosing the same piece of text, all annotations are displayed as a thread, so that allows students to read each other's comments as well. The following day in class, students discuss and defend their prediction, and we proceed to check their predictions by watching a short film adaptation of the story. What we do next is form groups of three or four students and do a live annotation session. Using one computer per group, I ask students to reread the text and look for clues that announce the end. And finally, I have chosen one last reading to showcase briefly how Annotation Studio, as a multimedia platform, allows the integration of media and text in a way that is germane to the understanding and analysis of the original text. I'm showing a fragment of a poem by Nicolas Guillen, Saint-Semayel, which has sort of a ritual chant rhythm to it. And what I did was to embed a recording of Guillen himself reading his poem, and which enhances students' appreciation for the rhythmic patterns of the poems, his use of language to create rhythm, and the Afro-Caribbean roots of the poem's music. The students are then directed to 3 different musical adaptations of Guillen's poem, and I asked them to reflect on how rhythm from the original text is conveyed in the different musical adaptations. Video annotation is not supported yet, so what I asked them to do is to select the text that introduces each of the videos out for their comments. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, so now you've seen 4 different kinds of uses for Annotation Studio. Of course, there are many more. And what we will be... Hello, now you can see our Jamie, come on in. So these have been 4 different kinds of uses. Annotation Studio has been used in many other contexts, also for peer review, because students, of course, can upload their own texts. And so there are many other kinds of possibilities, but I'm sure before we go much more into details, we can talk about Annotation Studio forever, but we want to hear sort of your comments, your questions, and we could already see some of them already coming through the chat and also on the Google Doc. So we just want to open it up for questions right now.
And I think we do have... Should we open the Google Doc? Is that the best way to go?
Yeah, the Google Doc has a number of
I think that's
on it already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll see.
And we've tried to
One of the first questions was about scan PDFs in landscape mode with 2 pages per sheet, including images and charts, which is very common in the humanities, and somebody was wondering how scans like that would be handled, uploaded.
Great question. At this point, not well. What we do offer is if you scan a PDF and there's an OCR layer in the scanned PDF, that will work fine in the sense that the text that has been OCR'd from the PDF can be imported. We've been experimenting with a number of different ways to support much more formatted PDFs. And we think probably the shortest path to offering that feature will be via pdf.js, which is a browser-based PDF renderer from Mozilla, the Firefox organization. There is provisional support for that, for the pdf.js in the next version of the Annotator, which is the tool that we integrate into Annotation Studio. So I think it's fairly safe to say that it will be possible, but it isn't yet. And I think within 12 months we would hope to have that kind of support. And in the meantime, we think we're a pretty good platform for simpler text. But
yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And someone also mentioned in the comment about PDFs, that they've been using NB which is also a tool that has also been developed here at MIT in the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab. This is a tool that was exclusively developed for annotating PDF, so we went clearly a different route because we wanted to get into texts, into not just highlighting areas on a PDF, but really getting deep into the text layer and do this kind of close annotation. But eventually, I think these two functionalities will merge.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. I just looked at the NB as well. Yeah, I have to say, I said this in the chat a couple times, but the Annotation Studio is so nicely designed. It's really beautiful and clear and has a great UI. And I know none of that, as somebody who's worked behind the scenes on lots of things, none of that is obvious while you're designing it. It looks obvious like that's how you would design it from the outside user, but you guys did a very, very, very nice job. So congrats on that. So there's another question here on LTI. What is LTI? Long
technology interchange, I believe.
Yeah, so there's a question here about having students signing up for another third-party account or Moodle interface or other kinds of course management interaction. So there's a question there about that.
Great question. Learning tools interoperability. Thank you, Hari. Yes, we actually, that's a little bit less vague in terms of how we're going to support LTI. We do have the intention to do that. It's great to hear that there's interest. We've heard that there is interest from other sources, and I know that having to create yet another account is an impediment to adoption to tools like this. We have set up Annotation Studio as a hosted application. I didn't talk about this during the demo, but it is possible now for you to have a subdomain. So where we have mit.annotationstudio.org, we've set up a dozen or more subdomains for other institutions. And the one that you would use if you don't have a subdomain is actually not the MIT instance, but the app instance, app.annotationstudio.org. All of that to say that the structure of the tool is very much in keeping with the LTI approach, which is that it's a hosted application. It can be run at a subdomain, and that subdomain can then be you can get access to it via an LTI through an LMS via LTI. So we are intending to add that support, and it's good to hear another vote for it. I'd be curious how many of the attendees are interested in that, but we do have a very clear idea that we're going to do it and how. And it should be within a few months.
Is there a subdomain now at Brown, or has that been
I don't know that there is, Rachel. No, I don't believe that Brown has a subdomain. We'd be more than happy to set one up.
Great.
Yeah, thank you for your input on that, Jamie. Hello. I know we've emailed back and forth a few times about this back in November last year. This is very, very exciting and interesting. I've been researching a lot of annotation tools for quite a while. A lot of faculty here at Amherst are very interested in trying this out. The main barriers to adoption are the LTI, or at least some sort of way around it, authentication. So setting up a subdomain might be very helpful for us to at least get some pilot projects off the ground. The NB thing is very interesting for us. The main reason why we like the scan PDF approach there is because of its support for active reading in the classroom. There's research out that shows that the way that the brain figures out text on a page, it creates these visual links between passages and visual content on the page, so that when you're skipping through, you can you remember, oh, it was on that paragraph was on such and such page next to that other paragraph, and that information gets it disappears when the text gets flattened without any page numbers or contextual information. So I actually have a faculty member right now doing exactly that kind of active reading in his classroom in a religion class, where he's scanned in books that have, classics, visual content, religious artwork, along with theoretical sort of analysis, expository writing, and he's finding that students really, really need that sort of anchor, that link to the visual orientation of the page. Hence why we're using NB. But I do love the user interface for Annotation Studio. Hence why I'm really hoping that that PDF.js approach can help out.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a very interesting point that you're making. I think really thinking about also a visual approach to reading, which I think is a great way because, as you say, so students remember text differently. They remember text also being in different positions on the page, and so on. And as Jamie said, eventually we will also support that because I think that's very important. Also, when you think about manuscripts, for example, that you might not OCR, but they might be images that can be annotated much in the same way, because we strongly believe that annotation should work in the same way across all kinds of media, images, PDF, audio, video, and so on, because you might also want to annotate a video with an image or a video with another sound, because all these ways are different kinds of engaging and interpreting a media text in different ways. So I think that's a great comment that you made. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. So our next question, I can't remember who this is from. Maybe Cindy or somebody. Can you talk about the accessibility and students who are accessing the tool in different ways? And there's also another question later on about different kinds of platforms, which is not the same thing, but does relate to the question of how people are accessing it and through which tools they're doing so.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll take the first one first, the accessibility question. This was one that we've done some rather we've tried to do some sort of user testing, usability testing, and accessibility testing. We've done all of these things. First pass, you can always do more, but one of the things that came out of the usability testing was actually that one of our internal folks at the usability lab here at MIT actually is blind and used the tool and accesses most of what he does on the screen via a screen reader. And he indicated that a key approach for him is to be able to select text on any kind of interface using a keyboard, and that the keyboard selection doesn't trigger the annotator the way that mouse selection does. There's no reason why that has to be the case, and so we brought this issue to the developers of the annotator, and they've integrated keyboard selection events as triggers for the next version of the annotator. So while there will be limitations going forward, that one we think will be removed. It will be possible to select text via keyboard annotation soon. And we'll continue to do usability and accessibility testing as we go. On the second question, I assume that the question about platforms was about mobile devices, but I'm happy to, which I'll address under those assumptions. But I'm also happy to, if it's not about that, to answer a different one.
Okay.
But we already do have provisional support for tablets and phones for mobile devices. You can both annotate and read back, texts on either of those kinds of devices. It is touch enabled, so it's not as good as the desktop browser experience, but it is there.
Yeah, I'm too old to think about doing this on my phone.
I don't want to read there either, but
I want a wall of text. So let's see here. Let's think about the other questions. So I think the question about the installing on campus servers has been answered, right? Whoever asked that? Yeah. And the formatting is Word, PDF, and text doc. I think that was answered. And there was a question about simultaneous synchronous annotation during a class session, which the demonstration seemed to say was feasible. Is there any limitations, or does it get buggy when that happens, or do you have any feedback on that concept?
Yeah, it's a great question too. So annotation, if there are multiple people annotating a single document simultaneously, that works fine. There's no issue with that. What I think the question might be pointing to is something we have talked about, which is automatic synchronization of different browser sessions, so that annotations by me and by another user would show up on both of our screens without refreshing the document. That's not currently implemented, but it certainly could be, and we have it on our roadmap. and it just requires a technology called WebSockets, and that's it's sort of well established. We haven't tried it yet, but it is something that people are using in classrooms, and they just have to refresh the browser once in a while if they want to get the latest data.
And that has been very useful, faculty actually asking students to annotate directly in the classroom session, and then they just constantly refresh, in order to get those new annotations up there. But it really fosters an in-class discussion then about different kinds of annotations. I think you've seen that in the Wentworth example and in some other ones as well.
Sorry.
Audio annotation. Yeah.
All right, so I had a question, actually, my next question on the document. You just put the group name in to join a group. Is that a feature that was coming with being an administrator on the tool, or can all users do that?
Great question. No, anyone can do that.
Okay.
Anyone create a document, add it to a group, anyone can join a group. So there's no real, it's not a security feature so much as just a overload management feature.
I see.
But anyone can create a group.
Right, so, and then anyone can join that group. So there's no way to sort of create an exclusive group just for your class, but it's sort of always kind of public in that respect?
Right, and that's actually the case within a subdomain, right? So subdomains don't see each other's data, but yes, for now, we haven't yet set it up so that there's an exclusive group. One way around that would be create a group with a string that no one will know or guess or use, and then just distribute that to the people you want to have access to.
Right.
But that's a good point. We know that groups are one of the most important features, but also not one of the easiest features to use in the sense that if you mistype a group name, you just won't be in the right group, and that's quite easy to do. So we know we need to offer a bit more along those lines. Group owners, for example, should be able to exist. It's
always been a sort of a balance between being extremely flexible because different instructors and different institutions want to name their classes differently, and the groups, and also Annotation Studio has been used in reading groups, for example, so they have a completely different way of naming their group. So on the one hand, creating that flexibility, but on the other hand, also making it really clear what the different features are and the differentiation between groups and classes and so on. I think we're still working on that, so any ideas how to improve that would be very appreciated.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to you about that. As person behind HASTAC, we have so many groups, and so that's been one of the questions too. Is we have different kinds of groups: public groups, private groups, groups that are limited membership, meaning you have to be approved by the group owner to be part of the group. And then when people are posting, they can choose to make it public or just available to the group, and so there are different options. But of course, the more options you have, the more confusing it is. It's always a balance. But I do think that I can see that actually being an issue. That if you have to type it in to find it, even just having that pop up as an option of autofill or sort of suggesting groups that you're in or something like that would probably go a long way. So let's see, there was a question about the program that allowed you to annotate the map, and somebody said they Googled it and it was Locast.
Yes, Locast from the Mobile Experience Lab.
Okay. Awesome.
Open Locast. It is open source, and so is Annotation Studio is open source as well.
Yes.
They're both on GitHub. We can send out links. Yeah.
Okay, great. And there was a question about an online class, and they assume the potential for collaboration is the same, which it does seem like that. And do you know of people who've used it in an online classroom?
It's a great question. I don't know of anyone who's used it in an online classroom. No, Annotation Studio. Am I right about the questions about Annotation Studio?
Yeah.
I can't tell. I'm in the camera right now.
Oh,
Hi. I'm Rachel.
This is Rachel.
Hi.
She gets credit for setting this whole thing up on our side.
Yeah, don't blame me for everything that went wrong. So it's being used in an online class this term, so we don't kind of know the full story of how that's going right now. I will say, however, that those of you in the Northeast, particularly the Boston area...
I was just thinking this as you were talking.
We had a bit of snow earlier this term. Not a lot, just possibly a record. And I was talking to instructors who had been using Annotation Studio, and one of the things they discovered as their courses got canceled after week of blizzards was that Annotation Studio was a nice way to kind of try and keep up with the reading and have the students keep up with their activities and their work for class, even though it's not an online class, it's an actual class, but they were able to kind of try and supplement their many lost class days with Annotation Studio.
That's really cool. So I had a question. Have you seen it being used for poetry and or code? One of the things that we've been talking about in my class is critical code studies, which is you know, the sort of using literary close reading analysis on code itself, which would be a really interesting way of thinking about, because it doesn't work in Google Docs as well because code is, you know, getting all screwed up. But I do think it would be possible, at least with some code, on to make a PDF out of it.
It's a fascinating idea.
Right, yeah, exactly. Well, you know, poetry, clearly, it has been used in many ways, but code studies, we haven't. So that would be the great first example. We look forward to.
Okay, I'll let you know how it goes.
Fine. In fact, if you'd like, I'd be glad to integrate a syntax coloring tool and a little checkbox if you want to say this is code. This is code. And I'd love to see how that works.
So a friend of mine is Mark Marino, who started Critical Code Studies, or sort of one of the instigators behind it, and I can totally imagine him wanting to use this in one of the classes that he teaches. And every year they host a Critical Code Studies working group, partially through HASTAC and partially on their own. And I think that they were having trouble on how to integrate collaborative annotating. So I can totally see that being used. So that's great. Thank you.
That's really wonderful. Yeah.
I'm going to do it right
now. Somebody in the chat is saying, "Ooh, syntax highlighting, yes." Any other questions in? There's a question here about digital collections such as letters.
Let's see if I can see what that question is here.
Connie, do you want to explain a little bit more on? You're mic'd, Connie. If you want to explain a little more. Anybody there? Connie, you there? I don't quite know what the context is.
Oh, she's in the chat window now.
Okay, here we go. Yes. All right. Let's see.
This is a little bit like an old-style talk show on television.
Right.
Yes, hello. Yes. Do we have you on air?
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Oh, it says her mic is locked.
Oh.
That's weird.
Let's see here. See if I can see it. Is it in the spreadsheet?
No, she's right up there. She doesn't have a question in there, but her mic should be unlocked.
It looks like you're on, Connie, but let's see here if I can see.
I don't think she.
Looking forward to seeing something new.
Yeah.
Okay. No.
I don't think it's not the question.
Maybe it's in the
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, maybe Connie, you could just type it into the chat there. Yeah.
What do you mean about letters? Letters like that letters write to people, or letters? Yes. Epistolary letters.
There is a so the
World War
II letters. Okay. Yes.
So I mean, I think the technology answer to that is anything you want to bring in text will work. Right, exactly. So if they could be OCR, so we've seen different amounts of success with OCRing different kinds of documents. Handwritten letters won't work that way, but when we support image annotation, you could presumably select a region on a handwritten letter and annotate that.
Yeah, so I think
Does she have collection of letters that she wants to upload?
Yes, I think yeah. So she says just text. Yeah, you have to be able to OCR it, which is optical character recognition, which is like when you can highlight a PDF, right? So some PDFs you can't highlight because it's an actual image, right? So you have to be able to OCR it, which is like the computer reading the letters, optical character recognition, and forming it into like a layer of text over top.
And unfortunately,
so you can do that, and not handwriting.
And unfortunately, it's very flawed as a technology, as we all know who have tried it.
Yeah, especially if you're doing it from a book or anything.
Well, and handwriting too. I mean, that's just something entirely different.
Yeah.
Altogether.
Yeah.
Well, I guess also one question that I would have is, so because I don't have the time to kind of go through this entire digital collection thing that she's got here, but if she's got you know, like JPEG images of them, she can upload those and have perhaps text that she's typed into a document. So, for example, she could create, for example, like a Word document where she puts the images in there and then types out the transcription of the letters and uploads that into Annotation Studio. So what you wind up with getting would be the image and then text transcription of that in Annotation Studio. So you still get the sort of materiality of the original text itself with a more modern day text version of it that you could then annotate in Annotation Studio. So you get both of them there that way.
Mm-hmm. Hari points out this is a great, that's a good idea, and I think certainly the only option at the moment. But Hari points out, yeah, it's a good idea, and Hari points out this is another test case for PDF.js. So we've got that support.
But there are interesting workarounds, you know, as Rachel said, and as you've also seen with the foreign language example. So there was actually audio in the annotation area. There was also video in the annotation area. But of course, right now you can only highlight the text, but it could be combined in the annotation area of Annotation Studio.
Any other questions from folks? This was so helpful, MIT.
It really was.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so great. I mean, obviously I've known what you do and I've seen it before, but it's something else to sort of sit down and try to figure out for the first time. Even as somebody who likes to tinker and, you know, teach things to my students, it's sort of like a thing that gets pushed off. So having somebody walk you through it and see all the different case scenarios and actually have other people ask questions is so helpful for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really great. And we'll also, as you know, we'll have a workshop at the HASTAC conference.
At the HASTAC conference. That's great. So I'm in Boston, so I want to come see you guys one day.
Yes, please do. Yes.
Come do a field trip.
Yes. As you can tell, it's a lot of fun over here.
Yeah.
I want to.
We can compare OCR.
I just want to make a couple quick logistical points. Don't forget about the forum if you have questions. If you are interested in the subdomain, contact us that way or through our website. Feel free. We'd be happy to set one up. The code is open source. We're always looking for collaborators, so feel free to have a look at the code itself, and that's it.
I also just want to add that if you want to learn more about Annotation Studio and see sort of more examples about it in use, you can go to the Annotation Studio website, which is www.annotationstudio.org, and so you can continue to learn more about Annotation Studio, get hopefully inspired more by other cases, and go off and running on your own and see what you can make of it.
And we would definitely love to hear from you how you're using it.
If you start using it, I will email you. Don't worry.
Okay.
Also, I was going to do a little push for the Google Doc. I did put a section in there on further information where I put the website link, also the links to the videos. Are available there for all the users who have been on the chat. On the bottom of the document, there's also a section that's called Ideas for Use of Annotation Studio in the Classroom and in Research, which I think both maybe all of you who have attended the webinar might find interesting, but maybe also you at at HyperStudio as sort of case studies and things, I don't know, case uses of the tool as well.
So we're going to clean up these notes and we'll post them on HASTAC. There was a question about whether this was recorded. It was. So we're going to clean up the notes and clean up the questions and put in some of the answers that were discussed, and then we'll post that along with the video on a new post on HASTAC so that can be shared around. because there was a lot of people who emailed me who couldn't come on Friday afternoon because of travel or whatever. So I do know a lot of other people want to be able to watch this and see some of the real life cases going through.
Great. Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
For having us. Yeah. Okay.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Yes,
Have a nice
you
weekend.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye.